Now that you have a better understanding of how to plan out your display, where do you even start with finding cons? I'm going into the series with the assumption that you already have items to sell. You don't need a ton of product, but you basically have enough items to fit a 3-foot space. Hi, I'm Macy and I'm the artist and designer behind Mualcaina, a small business focused on kawaii merch. For this series, I'm going to use cons and events interchangeably, and I'm mostly talking about anime cons as that's what I have the most experience in. However, most of this advice is still applicable for other events. First, consider your audience. So I sell a lot of cute anime art, and I probably won't do so well if I sell at a vintage flea market compared to an anime con. While I know my audience is geared towards anime fans and people who like cute things, I would also consider intersectional interests. For example, people who like Asian food may like anime and cute things. People who like anime may also be into K-pop. People who are into Japanese culture may like anime and cute things. Over the past year, I learned that some events that work for me are 626 Night Market, anime cons, Japanese cultural events, and very big comic cons. Some events that might not work for me are furry cons, smaller comic cons, basically geared towards Western art, gamer cons, and some anime car events. With that in mind, it's time to make a portfolio. Vending at cons have been increasingly competitive, and many now require that you submit a portfolio along with your application. I suggest creating a separate portfolio on a free platform such as Wix or Squarespace. It's not sponsored, by the way. I personally use Wix even though I sell on Shopify only because I occasionally close my shop, and my portfolio needs to be available whenever jurors are looking at it. Social media isn't always the best because it could always change depending on what you post, like on Twitter or Instagram, unless you make a separate Instagram just for applications. You can also link to your Etsy shop if you know you won't go on vacation mode anytime soon, or even a Google Drive link as long as it's organized. Just don't overcomplicate it. It's similar to a resume. Jurors only have a few seconds to scan your portfolio. They don't have time to scroll through hundreds of product photos, so just select maybe a maximum of 20 of your best ones and then move on. And you really don't need to have your entire catalog because they can pretty much get an idea of what you sell if you have a photo of your booth display. So some info to include in a portfolio are products you plan to sell at the event, an example of your table or booth layout, which can be a sketch if you don't have a photo, however a photo is better, an about section, and a list of past events if you have any. Basically, you want jurors to be able to envision your booth at their event. Make sure it's not password protected or visible to only certain people, or else they will pass on your app. Remember that they are going through hundreds if not thousands of apps, and they don't have time to reach out if they can't access it. Not all juried events judge this harshly, but it is something to consider. Now, where do you even find these cons and their applications? There are a few ways to find these cons. AnimeCons.com is a database where you can search for anime cons based on location and date and so on. I personally go on the Artist Alley Network International Discord, and the Con News channel is where other artists will ping when a con app is open, and it's super helpful. Artist Alley Confidential is a con review database. However, it's not the most up-to-date, but it can give you an idea of what events to research. I would also suggest seeing what events your favorite artists attend and then follow that con's socials and newsletter. Some of the US cons I've applied to are Anime Expo, Fanime, Anime NYC, Anime Boston, Holiday Matsuri, SakuraCon, Katsucon, San Japan, and so many more. Most cons tend to update their email newsletters and social media more than their site, so I would subscribe to them. The last thing you want happening is finding out about an event and then realizing you missed out on their apps period. So if you live in an area where there aren't many local events, however you are interested in traveling to these cons, comment below saying you're interested and I may make a video on how to do a travel con. So when do these applications open? Apps may open up months to even a year prior to an event. If you can't apply because you found out too late, consider just attending to see if it's a place you'll even want to sell that. It's also an opportunity to research displays that work and don't work, and talk to other artists to see how they're doing at that event. Although apps open up that soon, con staff may not reach out to you until a month or even weeks prior to an event, especially if it's juried, and I'll discuss what a juried event is in a little bit. I know for Fanime, they are notorious for letting artists know like maybe a month or two in advance if you got in. For Anime Expo, it's about 5 to 6 months in advance. I would just remember that some events are run by volunteers, and outside of their volunteer work, they do actually have their own full-time jobs. I would just expect little communication and don't be too pressed about it, even though they really should be doing better. I would suggest looking up their past events and try to see if there's a pattern so you can anticipate if they have load-in the day before, will send out acceptance months in advance, and so on. You can also just ask artists who've done that event through the Artist Alley Network International Discord. Now, there are 3 common ways of applying to Artist Alley. There's first come, first serve, jury, lottery, or a mix of either 3. Let's talk about first come, first serve. It's like buying concert tickets. If you're faster than other people at refreshing the page or submitting your info, you're more likely to get a table. Some cons that do this are Anime Impulse and Anime Expo, at least for returning artists. Some examples of these first come, first serve apps are applying via their site like Anime Impulse, filling out a PDF form and emailing it to staff like Anime Pasadena, filling out a Google form, or going through show clicks as if you are buying concert tickets. Anime Expo does this with returning artists, and they used to do this for the public until they switched to the jury system for new artists. What's nice about first come, first serve is that you immediately know if you got in. However, it is dependent on internet speed and how fast you type. I do suggest making a doc with all of your basic app info like social media links, your artist summary, an email, portfolio link, and so on, so you don't waste time filling out the application. The second app option is juried. So this is when you apply on your own time with a portfolio. Even though it's not first come, first serve, I suggest submitting your app as soon as possible because they can cut off apps unexpectedly once they reach a certain quota like Anime NYC. After the application period, which can be a week, 24 hours, or until they receive a certain number, conjurers will go through applications for several weeks to months to judge who will be accepted, waitlisted, or rejected. Cons that are juried are Anime Expo for new artists, AX Chibi, Fanime, Anime NYC, and Kawaii Con. This typically takes the longest because staff does have to take the time to go through hundreds, if not thousands of apps. It is dependent on the jury gods and if they like your work at the time, as it may depend because staff can change year to year. You can pretty much get into a con one year and then not the other without a reason. You can be the most amazing artist, but if jurors at the time are looking for Genshin art and you have mostly anime and gaming, they can reject you, and they don't usually tell you in the rejection email. Please note this isn't a judge on your hard work and art skills. This is all very subjective, and you shouldn't place your value based on others' preferences. It sucks because, especially for artists who are dependent on this for their main income, basically your financial situation is in the hands of the opinions of staff. However, you're just going to have to do your best in really making your portfolio shine and doing what you can in best representing your shop. So the third way is with lottery, and this is completely at random, and you can only hope that luck favors you. Some cons that do this are Anime Boston, SAC Anime, and San Japan, just to name a few. Lately, a lot of cons are implementing a mix of these, just to keep things fair and lessen the workload of Artist Alley staff. It makes sense if you don't have the time to go through thousands of apps. So some cons like to do lottery first, and then whoever was chosen within lottery will get juried. One of the more popular cons that does this is Holiday Matsuri. Before applying, make sure you read the rules. Some cons allow fan art, others only allow half original art and half fan art, like a 50-50 rule, while others are strictly original art. Some cons don't even allow sticker sales because attendees in the past vandalized the venue with stickers, or have a ban on NSFW work. Make sure you know the rules for these particular cons. You don't want to be the artist who gets their products confiscated, or can't even sell a good chunk of them just because they didn't read the instructions. Now that you've waited for a good period of time, it is time to receive your application results. You may receive an email saying you were accepted, waitlisted, rejected, or no email at all. If you were accepted, you are offered a table space, and in order to secure it, you will need to pay for it, or respond to them that you do accept the table and then pay for it. If you are rejected, you are not considered for the con at this time, and you need to start applying for other cons. If you're waitlisted, you are on a list where if accepted artists cannot attend or decline their table spot, you still have the opportunity to get a table. Basically, you're on the backup list. However, just because you are on waitlist, that does not mean you are guaranteed a spot later on. On the other hand, unfortunately, some cons just don't send out emails if you don't get in. It sucks to be left hanging, but if you don't get an email, just assume you didn't get in. Also, just so you don't waste your time waiting for a response. However, and this is a really big tip that I didn't know until I was talking to some other artists in person at cons. If you are local and were not able to snag a table, I would consider going to the event anyway, the day before or the day of, to see if there are no-shows. Some cons will let you buy a table if the artist does not show up by the first day. However, you need to be ready to accept a rejection if tables are completely full or if they're not selling empty spots. I would email Artist Alley staff a week prior and a few days before to see if they do sell no-show tables. It doesn't hurt to ask, especially if the con site does not explicitly say that they don't sell empty spots. With this option, you do run the risk of having prepared for a table but then not actually getting a table, but it's definitely worth trying, and you never know. Remember that applying is scary, but you don't want to be that person who gets in the way of you getting into your dream con just because you're too scared to apply. With this, I hope it helped you become more prepared with the Artist Alley process and what to expect. Click here to watch my Anime Expo vlog if you want to see the behind the scenes of selling in their Artist Alley. See you in the next video!